I can do what I can do. I can't look around and wonder what other people can do. Ultimately, the biggest thing I've learned is that many times we sit around and go, I wish someone would do something about that, without realizing if we look in the mirror, we can see that we are someone, that we can be the ones who does something about that.
This is a special edition of Roqe, the Uprising, 1 year later. And let's go to LA now. And our next guest is known for his comedy, his acting, his podcasting, his TV hosting. Born and raised in Washington, D.C., Tehran von Qasri is a second-generation Iranian American with a unique background, an Iranian dad and an African-American mom. He holds degrees in international politics and economic theory and principal from George Mason University. He has always been an advocate for freedom in Iran, and right now, Tehran joins me from LA. Hello, sir.
Hi, Jian. How are you?
I'm all right. Thank you so much for being part of this special. You know, I know activism is not new to you, but this has been, by any measure, quite an epic year for Iranians inside Iran and around the world. I know just how active you've been. What are you feeling 1 year later? And what lessons do you think we have learned, if any, as a global Iranian community in the year after the killing of Mahsa Amini?
1 year later, I'm still feeling inspired. I'm feeling motivated. I'm feeling ambitious in our movements. I'm also feeling exhausted, to be very honest. As a half Black, half Iranian, I feel like I'm just protesting all the time, Jian. All I do is protest. I'm just out there protesting. And I wish I could be attesting to the movements and the participation from the people. But the truth of the matter is, as tired as I am, I'm not nearly as tired as the people that I'm protesting for. So.
And the lessons part, what do you think? What's the takeaway this for the community around the world?
I think the lessons that we have learned here is that when it's power to the people, we can overcome the people in power. I think the lesson here is patience is a virtue. I think the lessons here are that we are all in this together. And ultimately, the age-old adage of injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And we see this as the domino effect of what's happening in Iran has now once again been spilled out into the streets.
Let me pick up on that, the idea of what we can do as a collective. How has the last year changed your impressions? If it has, maybe you already had these impressions, but it's certainly for some of us, you know, the 100,000 in Berlin or 80,000 here in Toronto, et cetera, was kind of a shock to the system in a positive way. How has the last year changed your impressions of what is possible for Iranians in the diaspora if we work together in support of those inside Iran?
It's changed my perspective in the fact that I've always been a fan of the Iranian people, but even more so now as I see hundreds of thousands of people around the world taking to the streets and speaking up and standing up against oppression. But it's not all good. It's not all a good takeaway. Honestly, I know Iranians tend to sometimes cover up the less parts. But the truth is there's a lot of bickering. There's a lot of infighting. There's a lot of people who weren't patient, and there's a lot of people who thought this was going to be an overnight thing, and I've seen a loss of momentum. And the lesson that I've learned personally is that I can't let those things affect me personally. I can do what I can do. I can't look around and wonder what other people can do. Ultimately, the biggest thing I've learned is that many times we sit around and go, I wish someone would do something about that, without realizing if we look in the mirror, we can see that we are someone, that we can be the ones who does something about that.
But I'm glad you turned it around there, because I was going to do the same and say that in the first 3 minutes of our conversation, you were giving quite a sunny perspective. And there certainly are those who would say, listen, September through January was amazing. But then somehow we lost steam. Somehow we balkanized as a community. We started the opposition started to, start unfollowing each other, both metaphorically and literally, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, now we're on the precipice of another nuclear deal between your country and America and Iran, the kind of thing that we thought would be unthinkable when we were out there in the thousands in October and November. So
then that just lets me know that people don't understand how governments work. The same way that governments are not its people, governments work for the benefit of the government. It's the people that needs to work for the benefit of the people. The United States is working in its own best interest. It is not working in the best interest of Iran or the Iranian people. So we need to get that out of our mind. And that's a perspective that I've had as a person of color and a Black person in the United States, when a lot of time we sit around waiting for someone to give us something instead of realizing that we have to get it ourselves. And as far as it comes with the loss of momentum, of course, you spoke about January. Well, January is the top month that most people go and get gym memberships. And they get gym memberships and everyone starts working out. And January 1st, they're like, I'm going to have a great body this year. And when it comes around February, that's also the month we have the most gym membership cancellations, because people realize you can't just do one sit-up to get a six-pack, that you have to do 100 sit-ups, 1,000 sit-ups, 1,000,000 sit-ups to get a six-pack. And then once you do it, you have to continue doing it. That's how it works for change. Whenever you want change, you have to work hard to get it. It's perseverance. And that's something that we have to learn as well.
Everybody's coming on this show today and saying we have to be patient. We have to realize that this takes time. This is step by step. And I kind of want to call that out a little bit, because I feel like that's the thing to say now, but that in fact there were a few months there early on where very smart people who've studied this stuff for years thought that we were weeks away from the toppling of the regime. Were we naive?
No, it wasn't naivety. It was hope. It was hope because people are just that tired, and we always want to hope for the best. But sometimes we have to plan for the worst. And it's not just about preaching patience. It's about remembering it. Because the truth is, while everyone thinks this revolution was unsuccessful, the truth is the evolution was extremely successful. The change has already happened, Jian. It will never go back to being the same. It might temporarily, but in 10 years and 20 years, it will change. It will change no matter what. It is the beginning of the end. And that's what the difference is. Those same students that were doing the unthinkable, that were going into the streets, these 10-year-old kids that were cursing at institutions you would never hear them say simply 10 or 15 years ago, they're going to grow up in 10 or 15 years, and they're going to be the ones in power. And the change has occurred. So don't think of it, when we look at history, everything looks like it happened overnight. The American Revolution happened overnight, 1776, but that's not the truth. It began in 1774 and it lasted till 1792. And that was then, and this is now. So the truth of the matter is, it's not about preaching patience. It's about practicing patience. It's about staying the course, about not steering off, and realizing that slow motion is better than no motion. And as long as we all move in the same path together, we will end up in the right place together.
It's such a privilege to have you on the show. I always appreciate your perspectives. Let me give you two more thoughts before I let you go. One, something I've mentioned on the program before. There was a moment where I sort of thought, well, you were probably there. It was in that big rally that happened in LA, and Reza Pahlavi was there, and he was kind of greeted as a rock star, and it seemed like a great day overall, but there was a tone to it that felt celebratory. And at that moment, we were doing interviews with people inside Iran, some of the people who've been in the front lines, who were going, we need backup. There's nothing going on here. We're being imprisoned. The streets are being cleared. And it felt like there was a real delta between the enthusiasm in the diaspora. It was almost like we won the revolution, and what was actually going on in Iran. Can you speak to that?
I was there on that day and I saw the crowd's reaction. And the truth is, it's anything, whenever you're in a bad situation, any little thing will seem like a sliver of hope. And that's what that celebration is. It was a celebration of people being together. And the truth is, I don't get into the politics of it all. I always remember the principles. The principles to me, this isn't about religion. This isn't about politics. There is no politics in persecution, oppression, rape, murder, torture. There's no politics in that. So whether people cheer a Pahlavi or not, that's on the inner workings that are above my pay grade, Jian. As a person who was born and raised in the United States, and someone who simply cares about my heritage, the truth is, all I know is that people in the diaspora will celebrate any little thing that gives them that feeling. What oftentimes in the United States people forget is that when immigrants come to this country, it's not because they want to. Most of the time, it is because they have to. And Iran is a perfect example of that. With one of the lowest diaspora immigration rates before the revolution and one of the highest afterwards, huge brain drain. These geniuses and titans of industry who are now the heads of Uber and the creators of eBay, they should have been in Iran right now. And that's something that is such a pain to people, that they look for any little thing as pleasure. So in the streets of Iran, what we need to do as the diaspora is we need to not become the voice. We need to amplify the voices of those that are unheard. The people on the street in Iran who are suffering even more so. We might be suffering from the memories. They're suffering from the present. And so we have to amplify their voices and not be the voices over talking them.
Gotcha. And just to clarify, I'm not picking on LA or the organizers who did a great job with that rally or anything. I'm talking about the diaspora in general. It was just
I understand. I understand.
I saw that rally and it was on that day, and at that moment I thought, geez, we have to make sure we're in sync with the people we're ostensibly supporting inside the country, right? A final question to you, man, and
if I could just give a quick note on that, I do want to say that this doesn't mean that when you're in the diaspora you can't go about your everyday life, because a lot of people tend to shame others or guilt others. That's not the way you persuade anyone to get on your side. The truth of the matter is that I understand life. Just don't forget woman, life, freedom. That is what I'm asking. Let's not say we can't have celebrations or we can't have joyous moments. That's not the case. In fact, now is the time to have even more celebrations and joyous moments and have any excuse to come together. Any excuse to come together as people, whether it's a Seiz de Bedar or a Mehragan or a protest or a rally, and even better yet, September 16th, when all over the world people are going to take to the streets of whatever city they're in and show their unified support for the people of Iran. Whatever that purpose is, let's refrain from guilting one another, restrain from shaming one another, and remember that we must celebrate one another.
All right. Well, I was gonna ask a final note about if the undertone of the conversation is a bit about collectivism and unity or disunity. There was a moment, again, I don't want to sound churlish about this, but there was a moment, it felt like in, say, November, where it was like, wow, we've unlocked the key. Finally, the Iranian community around the world is united, right? And then by March or April, it felt like, oh, okay, we're just a quick look at social media, your Persian Twitter, whatever it is, not united. What have you learned? What have you learned this year about how you believe? I know it's a crystal ball, impossible question to ask, but what you believe we need to do in the Persian community to achieve greater unity?
Honestly, it's a very simple concept, one that is entangled into the fabric of who I am as a person. United we stand, divided we fall. I've always thought this: the Iranian's best friend is an Iranian, the Iranian's worst enemy is also an Iranian. What we need to remember is that, and to be fair, it's not the fault of the Iranian. They've been disillusioned. They've been lied to so much. You want to know why Iranians believe in every conspiracy theory? It's because every conspiracy theory has happened to the Iranian. Every single conspiracy theory that you can think of has happened to the Iranian and the Iranian people and the diaspora. And so that is why they find themselves disillusioned. The reason why Iranians bicker is because they've been in many ways programmed to worry because of things like this. However, at the same time, the reason why, and I say this often, we can simply, we often talk about a history of Iran, so much so that actually it makes people upset. Like, why are we looking backwards? But the truth is, Our strength comes from many things. Our history, for example, the Arab invasion happened all over the Middle East. It happened all over the Middle East, and it actually happened in Iran as well. However, in the modern day, when I ask an Egyptian or a Lebanese or a Syrian or a Saudi or a Kuwaiti, they will ultimately say they are an Arab. But Iranians never became Arab.
Yes.
And the difference is because we had a culture that unified us, a language that unified us. We had a Ferdowsi, we had a Hafiz, and ultimately they did not. We had an identity that's greater than the sum of our parts. That diversity within Iran, whether it's the Kurd or the Armenian or the Azeri or the Baluchi or the Lor, whether it's the Jewish, it's the Christian, it's the Muslim, it's the Zoroastrian, it's the Baha'i, that diversity is what adds to the strength of the Iranian. And so let's not let that be our weakness, but once again, our greatest strength.
Nicely
and
done.
Remember, we are the people. And those are the three most dangerous words ever uttered. We, the people.
Nicely done. By the way, it's above my pay grade to take a political position. I love that. You're like literally one of the smartest guys I know, but that's your way of elegantly getting out of a political stew. I appreciate it. Well done.
That's what makes me smart, Jian, is I stay away from those conversations.
Well done.
Those are conversations no one can ever win.
It's true. It's especially in our community. Thank you so much for doing this. It's a pleasure to have you part of the special. Always an education talking to you. Thanks for doing this, brother.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.